They say it all started with a bang. Where there was once nothing, came everything. In a single instant, every atom that built the foundation of the universe in which we live appeared. That's what we've been told. And that's certainly a way of looking at things. To the casual observer, our devoid universe was filled to the brim with energy within a nanosecond. But the truth is much more complicated than that. Before there was something, there was Udu, the Unus Mundus drive operation, a wave existence residing in the universe's upper domain, a being with unfathomable reach and power. Put simply, Udu is what we would refer to as God. The upper domain, his home, is a plane of existence far removed from our perception in the lower domain. Udu has always existed and will continue to exist long past the end of time. Trillions upon trillions of years, near unfathomable to a human, is nothing but a drop in the ocean of time for Udu. We can surmise what happened next, though we don't know why, and we don't know how. A single object had materialized in the lower domain. It is known by many names. Some call it Marienkind, others the Conduit, or even the Gate, but many know it by the name Zohar. This object is the cause for the repeated destruction of every single thing in the lower domain. Every man, woman, and child, every planet, every galaxy, all of it. This is because the Zohar is a gateway to the upper domain, a gateway to a source of absolutely limitless and unimaginable energy. This object that manifested isn't necessarily the Zohar either. It's simply the easiest way for the denizens of the lower domain to perceive it. Its true nature is forever kept from our gaze. Also within the lower domain, an intangible force known as the collective unconscious was formed inside the imaginary number domain. This force, like everything in the imaginary number domain, is entirely imperceptible. Its purpose is to contain the wills of the deceased who come to inhabit the real number domain, the domain of the soul, and the domain of substance. One cannot exist without the other. The first ever being within the lower domain was then brought into existence. In order to protect the delicate balance of the universe, the collective unconscious created the guardian of the lower domain, a man known as Wilhelm. Every single action he takes is in service of the lower domain's preservation. To further this goal, Wilhelm utilizes the compass of order and chaos. The compass has an extremely unique property of being able to show the viewer every phenomena in the universe before it unfolds. In other words, it allows him to see the future. It's unclear what the exact relationship between Wilhelm and the compass is, but there is a definite spiritual connection between the two. Over billions and billions of years, the rest of the atoms in the universe began to churn. They danced an almost unending dance. The once non-existent particles swirled and twirled for longer than we'll ever be able to comprehend. Stars were birthed and died in succession for an eternity. Worlds which have never been observed and never will be were formed and faded. And eventually, in this endless night, trillions upon trillions of particles began to create the stars in our sky. Then Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Moon, and then planet Earth. And it's on this planet, this ball of water, after millions upon millions of years of change, that we truly begin our story. In roughly 5 BC, a young couple had just finished their journey across the countryside. Their destination? A manger on the outskirts of the city of Bethlehem. They were traveling there because the man, Joseph of Nazareth, was required to register in the census as decreed by King Caesar Augustus. Consequently, all lodging in the area had been filled. The woman, Mary of Nazareth, was far along into her pregnancy and desperately needed somewhere safe to rest for the night. Joseph, exhausted himself, was determined to find them both a room. Luckily, Joseph was able to secure a place to stay in a crudely built manger. It would be on this particularly busy night in Bethlehem, in a simple manger, that Mary gave birth. She had brought into this world the boy who would come to be known by many as the Son of God. The Messiah, Jesus Christ, had been born. As Jesus transitioned into adulthood, it became increasingly clear that he was indeed special. He had the uncanny ability to enrapture people in his sermons. He praised love and forgiveness in what many would consider to be a hate-filled and selfish world. Through his efforts to spread the word of the Lord, Jesus would gain many apostles and followers, but for our purposes, the most important of them are a young boy named Yeshua and a woman named Mary Magdalene. These two followers of Jesus possess the powers of anima and animus, respectively. In fact, they are anima and animus personified. They suddenly appeared during the time of the Messiah and do not seem to age, much like Wilhelm. Yeshua's power of anima is capable of controlling the relics of God, which are powerful objects in a class of their own, such as the Zohar. Mary Magdalene's animus acts as a failsafe to prevent anima from annihilating the universe. The power of animus is then checked by the existence of a regular woman known only as the Maiden of Mary Magdalene. Yeshua, Jesus' miracle worker and most loyal confidant, was entrusted with Lemmageton. Lemmageton acts as a control program that, when recited, utilizes a very specific energy frequency in order to access the Zohar. Since he is anima, Yeshua is the only one who can truly understand and recite Lemmageton properly. At this point, Wilhelm decided to act. Concerned with Yeshua's access to Lemmageton, he felt that Jesus and his followers posed a threat to the balance of the universe. Using Ormus, a secret society that he had formed, he persecuted Jesus and his apostles. After one final meal with his friends, he was arrested and found guilty of a multitude of crimes. Jesus was then crucified, died, and was buried. Now, without the guidance of the Messiah, Mary and the apostles decide to construct a new relic of God, Zarathustra. This device would allow them to transcend to the world of God, the upper domain. Mary believed that this plan would save the universe. However, Udu did not permit this course of action, and when Zarathustra failed, Wilhelm was able to seize control of it. In another desperate attempt to protect the universe, Mary used the power of Animus to split Yeshua's power in half and remove it from him. This retrieved half was then further divided and placed into 12 objects known as the Anima Relics. This would prevent the Zohar from being accessed by Anima. Shortly after this, the Maiden of Mary Magdalene and Mary herself passed away, and Mary was sadly unable to save the both of them. The power of Animus had become weakened due to splitting the power of Anima. Yeshua, terrified of his power and what his future held, ran away, starting a new life for himself, and he began using the name Chaos. he moved through history silently and alone. Unable to trust or get close to anyone, he suffered without any support. Upon her death, Mary's soul scattered across the imaginary number domain. Her body, alongside the 12 relics of anima, was entombed by the apostles in the French commune Rennes-le-Château. Their hope was that this location would be suitable to keep Mary's body and the relics away from Wilhelm. To this end, the Zohar and the Compass of Order and Chaos were also hidden. This time, the location was chosen to be the depths of a large lake in eastern Africa. As hundreds upon thousands of years pass, he watched as Wilhelm's political powers influenced countless events throughout history. All of them in service to his goals. Wars are fought on countless fronts, nations rise and fall, religions are established and abandoned. Technology slowly advances as human civilization stretches to every corner of the globe.
He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should be his beauty, and to impress him takes on multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
And finally, they found it. At some point in the 21st century, an archaeological expedition began taking place in Lake Turkana in Kenya. The expedition was funded by a multi-venture business known as Vector Industries. Its founder and CEO was none other than Wilhelm. Something called magnetic abnormal matter had been detected in the area, and Wilhelm went to great lengths to find the source. After weeks of searching, the university scientist leading the expedition, a Dr. T. Masuda, stumbled upon the Zohar. Along with the Zohar, Masuda and his team unearthed a written copy of Lemmegeton as well as the Compass of Order and Chaos. The research team noticed that these artifacts were stratigraphically out of place, meaning that this technology was so far advanced that the era in which it came from was wholly incompatible with them. After the expedition had concluded, the Zohar, Lemmegeton, and the Compass were brought to a research facility in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, owned by Vector. As research into the Zohar progressed, it became increasingly clear that this object was unlike anything else in the universe. The Zohar was proven to be a perpetual motion machine which defied all known laws of energy. After discovering this, the coalition government worked to create a new institution entirely dedicated to the study of this object, and thus, Eidos was born. At this time, the chief of Vector's Zohar research department, Grimoire Verum, was tasked with translating Lemmegeton into a computer program. This would allow Eidos and Vector to control the Zohar's immense energy. Upon completion, Program Lemmegeton was used to link their systems with the Zohar. For whatever reason, Grimoire used his daughter, Nephilim Verum, as a catalyst in this experiment. Unfortunately, everything went terribly wrong, and Nephilim had disappeared into thin air upon activation of the program. The Zohar then began a large-scale matter shift, which slowly expanded across a wide area of the planet, even engulfing Grimoire himself. This was thankfully slowed to a crawl by Wilhelm's power, who then started making preparations to evacuate humanity from Earth. The Earth-Life Colonization Project was born. The ECP, or Project Exodus as it came to be known, was an effort to colonize other planets in the vast expanse of space. Massive ships carrying upwards of 1.5 million people were sent into the great beyond over the course of several years. After roughly 10 years of research, it had been concluded that the Zohar was not only able to generate infinite energy, but could act as a gateway to other universes, to other domains. Grimoire's experiment had made it perfectly clear the danger that a meta-universe manifold posed to all of humanity. Should anything else go wrong with this research, the result would be catastrophic. It was decided that the Zohar would be moved far above the surface of the planet Earth and onto their newly constructed orbital ring. This ring spanned the entire length of the equator and was propped up by 3 towers, or beanstalks as they were called. Rhadamanthus, the first tower, Ichus, the second, and Minos, the third. It was Rhadamanthus where the Zohar would be stored. On this massive orbital ring, Eidos created an artificial intelligence collective known as the Trinity Processor to govern and protect the Zohar. As the name suggests, the processor was made up of 3 parts: Ontos, Logos, and Pneuma. These 3 were then raised in virtual reality in order to give them each a distinct personality. Pneuma and Logos were meant to form their own opinions and desires, and Ontos became their arbiter. This created a stability in the dynamic between the 3 personalities. One could not act without the approval from another. The Trinity Processor would go on to expand the network of protection for the Zohar, entirely independent of humans. It was through this process that the artifices were created in order to protect the orbital ring after the processor began recognizing possible threats to its safety. Around the same time, a group of people called the Saviorites, also known as the Salvatores, was formed by a man named Dmitry Yuriev. This organization began lobbying the government for equal human rights. Details on why are scarce, but it's theorized that these Salvatores were actually early versions of what would become designer children. Children who, before birth, were genetically engineered by their parents to match an exact template of the child that they wanted. It's possible that the Salvatores wanted this process to cease entirely, hoping to grant all potential children the right to be born without genetic intervention. After all of their hard work, they were able to get a human rights protection bill brought before Congress. However, this bill was very quickly shot down, much to the dismay of Yuriev and his collaborators. It was at this point that the Salvatores became a powerful rebel faction who would take what they wanted by force. They were hell-bent on overthrowing the coalition government, and they demanded that the Zohar be handed over to them. This began one of the largest conflicts humanity had ever seen. Even the skies above were not safe from the flames of war. Every artifice was mobilized to protect Rhadamanthus and the Zohar from the rebel approach. Eventually, the Salvatore's push on Rhadamanthus became too much for the Coalition to handle. After little deliberation, the Coalition's director decided that they had no other choice. The Zohar could not fall into the hands of their enemies. He ordered the activation of the most powerful artifice of all, one so powerful it could end up destroying the planet, Ion. But just before Ion is able to be activated, the operator realizes that they are unable to access Ion's power via the Zohar. One of the head scientists at Eidos, Klaus, had somehow intentionally locked the permissions of everyone else on the orbital ring. Klaus was now the only one with control over the Zohar's power. Professor Klaus was largely unsatisfied with the state of humanity. He saw the current conflict between the coalition government and the Salvatores as yet another example of humanity's many, many failures. Klaus sought to fix everything, though. He decided that with the Zohar's limitless power, he would create a new world, one without the petty squabbles of the current one. Jaded, Klaus believed that the Zohar was a gift from God himself, and he would use that gift to help humanity ascend to the next stage, to become as gods. As Klaus prepared his phase transition experiment, he was interrupted by one of his research partners, his friend Galea. She pleaded with him not to toy with the power of the Zohar, since they truly didn't know what would happen when activated in this way. Despite her warnings, Klaus pushed Galea to the floor, and to her horror, activated his experiment. With a single button press, the fates of billions of people had been altered. Klaus had indeed ended the conflict, but at what cost? He forever changed the passage of fate. It was the simple curiosity of a single man that destroyed the universe and created a new one.